I've learned through my time as a player and as a coach that it's far more important to know where you're going to hit the ball and the tactics you're going to use versus how you hit the ball. If you want to win more matches, it is far more important to know what you're doing out there instead of just hitting a quality ball. And so today I'm going to give you a basic framework for how to choose better decisions and play a more optimal strategy for your specific game. So let's get started. So one thing I found as a coach is that players can sometimes misinterpret words we use as coaches, and that can change the meaning of the message. And I'll give you like a very basic example. In doubles in a one-up, one-back situation, a lot of times I say, don't cover your alley. Don't worry about it. What people hear is instead of the alley, they hear line. And that couldn't be farther from what I want. I want you to cover the singles court of your line and just a little bit of the middle when you're at the net and leave the alley. But you can see how those two things could be confusing. And a couple other words that I find players get confused on average are aggressive and passive. And so we're going to discuss what those two things mean today. If I were to ask you, what is an aggressive player? You're probably thinking someone who hits fast, someone who hits a fair amount of winners, someone who comes to the net a decent amount, and maybe someone who spreads to the corners, but someone who's trying to make things happen. If I were to ask you to describe a passive player, it'd probably be the exact opposite. Someone who hits slow balls, high, maybe more through the middle, staying behind the baseline and not trying to do much. But to me, there's no such thing as aggressive or passive. There's just optimal. And I'm going to put the definition down below. I'm not sure exactly what optimal is, but it's the best or the most likely path to success. And that's the tactic that I want you to use at all times. And so just to show you that aggressive and passive don't really exist, I'll give you a few examples. If someone were to give me a short ball up in the court and I had a forehand from right about here, I would choose to hit the ball pretty fast and a little more to the corner, trying to hit a winner or a forcing shot. To me, that doesn't make the play aggressive. It just is optimal given the situation. I have a short ball up in the court. It's higher for me. I'm able to hit with more pace. The net is lower. I have less risk there. The correct optimal play would be for me to attack. On the same hand, if I was behind the baseline and stretching for a lob, and I threw a slice lob up slow through the middle of the court, I wouldn't necessarily call that passive play. I would just call that the optimal tactic given my situation. I'm in trouble. The ball's out of my strike zone. I'm in a defensive part of the court. The optimal play is for me to just push a lob back through the middle, not go for something super aggressive. And so a very basic idea to play optimal tennis would be that when you're on offense, play offense, and when you're on defense, play defense. And that sounds super simple, and yet I can probably find 50 examples where people do the exact opposite. So let's pretend I've got that same ball. I'm stretched in the corner here. I see people try to slap passing shot winners all the time. That seems like a very aggressive play, a very offensive play from a defensive situation. I've also seen people get nervous, so they get a short ball and they're up here ready to finish, and they just kind of tap one in and massage it because they're scared to miss. And I would call that playing more defense from an offensive situation. So a very simple way to check if you're using an optimal tactic would just be, was I in an offensive situation? And did I attempt to play offense? And I think another important thing is to recognize that offense doesn't mean hitting the ball fast and hitting the ball to the corners. Offense could be taking the ball early on the rise. Offense could be coming to the net. Offense could be a drop shot. Offense could be an aggressive topspin lob. So it's not always just hitting fast, but if you were in an offensive situation and you played offense, you probably chose an optimal tactic. And same thing, if you're on defense, but you chose a defensive play, we're also okay there. Another example of defense, it doesn't necessarily have to be high and slow. If I was in the corner and I tried a low slice through the middle, that's a very good defensive play. It doesn't necessarily mean that I hit a slow, high moon ball. So hopefully we're pretty clear on how we want to play in obvious offensive or defensive situations. But we also have that third situation, which is neutral. They just hit me a rally ball. I'm standing near the baseline. It's not particularly weak. It's also not particularly offensive from them. And I have my choice of what to do. And here's where you have to know your own game. So it's easy for me to use myself as an example. I was a serve and volleyer. I had great volleys. I like to come into the net. I hit the ball pretty big and flat, but I also wasn't super consistent. So my whole game was focused on getting to the net, serving and volleying and coming in. So if I got a random neutral ball through the middle, it's a 50-50. I can kind of do whatever I'd like. Knowing what my strengths are, the optimal play when I receive a 50-50 ball would probably be to come up in the court, take it a little earlier, maybe come in behind it, or I'm just trying to play offense on that ball to generate a short ball. Again, for me, that would be the optimal tactic. If I was a smaller guy, a road runner with great footwork, I hit high heavies and I could never miss, when I got that same neutral ball, the optimal play would probably be for me to hit one high cross court and then back up a little bit so I can grind and use my strengths. So my own game will dictate what that optimal play would be from a neutral situation. All right, so we've got offensive situations covered, defensive and neutral. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but it's actually starting to rain. I'm out here grinding on a Saturday night in the rain. So if you're finding this helpful, I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to the channel. But we've got those three situations down. Now let's talk about the variables that can also influence your optimal tactics. So one of them, even though it's raining, is weather. So if it's really hot, that ball might be moving quickly and bouncing high. That will impact what tactics might be the best on that day. If it's really cold, same thing. The ball might be bouncing lower, things might be slower. That can impact it. The one I want to talk about the most today is wind. So one shot that I had that was very effective was a drop shot. So when people would give me a short ball, I'd come up, take it early, switch my grip, and throw in the drop shot. That was a high percentage tactic for me in neutral situations. Now, let's imagine the wind is blowing hard behind me. I've got wind behind me. Now my drop shot is going to get pushed deeper into the court. So because of those windy conditions, now instead of taking that short ball for a drop shot, I might want to take that short ball and come in on a normal approach that's moving through the court quickly. On the flip side, if I was on the other side of the net and the wind was coming into me, that might make my drop shot an even more optimal play. The second variable that comes into play is the court surface. So we've got clay, we've got hard, we've got indoor. Many of you are probably not playing on grass. If we stick with my drop shot example, the drop shot is an optimal play pretty much on any clay, whether it's a fast clay court or a slow clay court. And it's definitely a good play on a gritty, slow, hard court. So anything where I can make them change directions and slip, or my ball can get grabbed by that hard court and stay short, that drop shot remains an optimal play for me. If I was on a faster hard court or an indoor, kind of like California hard courts from what I've seen when I'm out there, that ball tends to skid. And so now my drop shot, again, instead of hitting and stopping short, might be moving through the court. So that might make it a less optimal play on that day if I was playing on a very fast hard court. The third variable we have is how you're feeling on that day. So I had a great drop shot. I didn't have a great drop shot every single day that I played. Some days I would come out and my hands just felt hard. I just couldn't really feel the ball on my strings. And I would know that somewhere in the warm-up or maybe in the first few games. If I don't have my drop shot on that day, even though it might be a smart, normal play for me, on that particular day, it's no good. I don't have it. So when I get those short balls, the optimal play would probably be just a standard slice or topspin approach deep. But I've got to take my own temperature and not be stubborn and just say, this is what I always do, so I should do it every day. Your body, how you feel, your rhythm, your timing are different every day. So you've got to take your own temperature. The fourth variable is your opponent. So sticking with the drop shot example, if I play you and you can't move, you are slow, you can't move forward, drop shot obviously is an incredibly optimal play. But let's say you're someone who's very fast, you're crafty with your continental grip, and you like running around. Well, now that drop shot might not be as effective. Maybe I need to approach deep through the middle so you have no angles to pass me and you don't get to use one of your greatest strengths, which is your movement. So I've got to take your strengths and weaknesses into account as well in those neutral situations. So the fifth variable is maybe the most important variable, and that's the score. And we know that people play differently and feel differently based on the score. So when I run my junior clinic out here and it's a playoff point, generally speaking, I see people play optimal tennis the way that I've instructed them, which is going kind of higher and through the middle because at their age and skill level, that is their optimal tactic. Making a ball for them is a very good job. What I want you to consider, though, is that the optimal tactic might lose you the battle, but win you the war. So let's take a low value point like a 5-2 40 love. If I were to get that short ball, maybe my best play is the drop shot. But because that point is a low value point, I might choose to come in there and just hit my normal topspin approach. I could still win that point for sure. But what it does is it opens up my drop shot for later on a more valuable point. So maybe in the second set when it's 2-all deuce and I come up here, because I hit a topspin approach earlier, they're not onto my game, and then I can fake and hit the drop shot. So the optimal strategy for me at 5'2", 40 love was to go away from my drop shot, which might be my best play, so that I can use it on a higher value point later in the match when it matters most. So that might seem like a lot, and honestly, quite frankly, it is a lot. And in a normal match, we might have 150 points times 4 balls a rally. That's 600 balls coming at you and leaving 600 decisions that I don't think the average 4-0 player is going to always make an optimal tactical decision. I'm still learning this, and I've been in the game for 30 years, and it's my whole job to study the game and watch tennis, and I don't make perfect decisions. It can be overwhelming at first, but I would encourage you to fight through that pain. Most people, when they start thinking about these things, it's so overwhelming, they just go, you know what, I'm just going to hit cross court, or I'm just going to do what I want to do, and they don't grow, and then they don't learn. And so as you think through this more on changeovers, and as you watch your matches on video, things are going to start making more sense. Decisions are going to happen quicker. You're going to make them with a lot less brain power, and so you can use that thought for something else. So a great indicator if you're on your way to optimal tennis is when you finish these matches and you're winning, but you don't really feel like you hit the ball better. That's a great indicator that you are now playing optimal tennis.